Harihi Om Gajananam Bhudaganadisevidam Kavittajambho Phalasarabakshitham Umasudam Sokha Vinashakaranam Namami Vickneswara Pada Pankajam Om Jnananandamayam Devam Nirmalarspatikatrudhim Adharam Sarvavidyanam Hayagreevamupasmahe Yasyat Paradavakratyaya Parishatya Parashatham Vignau Nignauti Satatam Vishvashremau Tamashraye Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Gurave Sarvalokanam Bisaje Bhavaroginaha Nidaye Sarva Vidyanam Sri Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Saishwararphanamastu Ramanujadaya Patram Jnana Vairagya Bhushanam Srimat Venkatanathayam Vande Vedanta Deshikam Lakshmi Nada Samarambha Nada Yamuna Madhyamam Asmat Achadya Padyantam Vande Guru Parampara Om Apadamapahartharam Dhatharam Sarvasampadham Lokabhiramam Shri Ramam Bhuyo Bhuyo Namamyaham Ramaya Ramabhadraya Ramachandraya Vedase Raghunathaya Nathaya Sithayam Pataye Namaha Om Shri Rama Rama Rame Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tattulyam Rama Nama Varanane Ramanama Varanane Nama Iti Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramarphanamastu Astika Namo Namaha Suswagatam. Hello and welcome to the second week of the series in Ramayana where we are looking to see what the true essence is. So it's not the story, but what the essence of the story is and how we can, drink that essence and apply these principles of life, this leadership by example, into our daily mundane lives, right? So last week, I began by giving you an introduction, right, to the seven kandas. Right? So the Bala Kanda, Ayodhya Kanda, Aranya Kanda, Kishkinda Kanda, Sundara Kanda, Yuddha Kanda, and finally the Uttara Kanda. And I told you how things began to take shape, both on earth with Dasharatha reaching out to Rishyamukha, to ensure that the two yajnas that was prescribed for him to do, namely the Ashwamedha Yajna and the Putrakameshti Yajna, both were being done, and all the preparations were made. And of course, I took you to the abode of the heavens, where in Vaikunta, everybody had met Lord Vishnu, right? Brahma had taken all the devas who were being terrorized, by the force of Ravana. And of course, there was a divine drama which was planned and which was about to unfold. So two things happening in preparation to receive what was, going to be the seventh avatar in the lineage of the Vishnu Dashavataram, called Sri Rama, right? So Vaikunta, that was happening. And of course, in Bhuloka, Dasharatha was preparing everything. Everything is prepared, and then the Ashwamedha Yajna starts. If you remember, I explained to you what the significance of Ashwamedha Yajna is, right? If today you go to Kashi or Varanasi, there is a gut called Ashwamedha gut or Dasha Ashwamedha gut. Okay. Anyway, so the first Yajna, the Ashwamedha Yajna, was started and completed successfully by Rishyamukha Rishi, right? Rishyamukha. Now, and then of course, once that was finished, they moved on to the second and the more important Yajna. The first one was just the foundation. The second one was called Putra Kameshti Yajna, right? And of course, that was commenced, and all the acharyas were doing. Of course, it was presided over by Maharishi Rishyamukha himself, and they were doing all the chanting and all that. And of course, I'm sure you've seen in havans in the homas, and either the priest do it in the temples, or even when you have it done in your house. I'm sure you would have observed that the final oblations, the final offering is something called Purna Ahuti, right? This is the final offering that is made to Agni Deva. Agni Deva is, of course, a representation of the fire that is started, and the different dravyas are being offered to Agni Deva, right? So Purna Ahuti, Purna means completion, completeness, right? For the sake of completeness, Purna, or Purnam as we say in Tamil, right? And Ahuti means the final offering. So it is the Purna Ahuti basically means the final offering to complete the entire offering to Agni Deva, right? So they were offering this final offering, and it's the culmination of the yajna. It's called Purna Ahuti, right? So when they were offering it, as the last bit of offering fell into the fire, the sacrificial fire, out of the fire came someone called Yajna Purusha. Yajna Purusha is the representative of Agni Deva. He is the one who receives. He is the one who receives everything you give to Agni Deva, right? And Agni Deva then receives it from Yajna Purusha, right? And he brings everything that he receives to one state of being, that is equanimity. Nothing you offer into the fire is the same at the end when the fire has finished dealing with it. Now this is called state of equanimity, right? This is the power of the fire, which is why we use fire in all the Hindu sampradayas and the pujas and the havans and homas and so on and so forth, right? Rites and rituals. Now, if you take the Panchabhutas, and I have said this before in my different talks, if you take the Panchabhutas, the only thing that cannot be polluted or is beyond pollution is fire or Agni, right? If you take earth, it can be polluted. If you take water, it can be polluted. If you take air, it can be polluted. If you take space, akasha, that can be polluted. But fire cannot be polluted. And that is why we use fire in all our yajnas and sampradayas, especially, we show arati as a fire, right? So that's the fire. The fire represents light. Light represents jnana. Jnana represents wisdom, right? Only with wisdom can you direct the intellect. And only when the intellect is directed by the wisdom, it can dictate to the mind how the mind should respond, right? So that is the significance or the symbolism behind it. And that is the connection. The fire is Paramatma, and of course, man looking at it is the Atma. So the connection between Manusha and Purusha through these homakarmas is done. So Yajna Purusha, at the end of it, after everything was offered, Yajna Purusha came with a golden vessel. He came with a golden vessel, a golden kalash. Inside, of course, there was Deva Amritam or Deva Payasam, right? Payasam. This is like a sweet dish. And he gave it to the Kulaguru, the Sharathas, Kulaguru. He gave it to him and he said, give this to your wives. Give this Payasha or give this Anna to your 3 wives. Okay. So Dasharatha takes the vessel and his wives are also there. Right, he is there, seated there, and his 3 wives are also seated there. So he goes and he gives 50% of the content of the vessel to Kaushalya. Then he gives half of that 50%, half of that, another 25% he gives to Sumitra. So balance 25%, right? 50 is given to Kausalya, 25 is given to Sumitra, then there's only 25% there. But he gives half of that, 12.5%, right? He gives it to Kaikeyi. And then there's still 12.5. So first wife, second wife, third wife, in that half of what he gave to the first wife, the second, half of what he gave to the second to the third, right? Like that he gave, and there was a balance of 12.5% in the golden pot. As he's walking back to the sacrificial fire, he's thinking, should I ask Vashishta what to do with the balance? Then he says, no, I will give it to whoever comes next amongst my wife. And who should come and ask him? But Sumitra, right? So Sumitra came, and then she also got another 12.5%. Right? So that is why Sumitra had the payasam twice, and that is why she had twins, Lakshmana and Shatrugna, right? Now, that's one thing you need to be aware of here, right? Everybody talks about Rama and Lakshmana, Rama and Lakshmana, Rama and Lakshmana, right? And there's some confusion out there whether Lakshmana was born second, right? So first, so let me clarify, right? And this has been said by Valmiki Maharishi himself, right? First, Rama was born. Then immediately after, the number two, second born was Bharata, second son to Dasharatha. Then only Sumitra gives birth to Lakshmana and Shatrugna, right? That's the, that's the connection from a birth perspective, right? First Rama, then Bharata, then Lakshmana and Shatrugna. But if you look at the real aspect of who these people are, then you will know why they were always together, right? Rama, of course, is Lord Vishnu. Lakshmana, of course, is Adishesha, right? And what you call Bharata and Shatrugna, Shanghi and Chakra, they were always together at the same place. And of course, Adishesha was where Rama was always found to be. And of course, at his feet, there was Lakshmi, right? So you see, Rama, Lakshmana and Lakshmi were together. Bharata and Shatrugna were together, right? Like that. That is the significance, right? And I told you last week who are the actual players behind. So you got to look at it from, the role that they are playing on earth, not who they really are, right? And that's the mistake many people make, because a lot of them saying, well, but Rama is a god, what? No, Rama was not God. Rama was born as a normal human being, just like you and me. And that was a sankalpa they undertook. When Vishnu said, Agni, you will be this, Surya, you will be this, he didn't say you will go with your powers. He says you will not know who you are in reality. You will forget who you are, and you will be born without any powers as a normal person. When the sankalpa is accomplished and you return to your original self, until that moment in time, you will not remember who you really are. Okay? So Rama and Lakshmana were, throughout their trials and tribulations and tests, they were always together. And of course, Sita was with them for some time, right? So let's look at the birth now, right? So all this, the wives were fed with the payasam. So they conceived. And then, of course, now we are looking at when the birth is going to take place. Now, in the Hindu, in the Hindu Shastras, there is one Shastra called Jyotisha Shastra. Jyotidam, astrology is one of the Shastras that is currently existing, right? So in Jyotisha Shastram, right, of course, Dasharatha consulted Vashishta, who consulted, Narada, and of course they were looking, when are these children going to be born? When is this Rajya going to be blessed with Yuvarajas, So they were asking. And of course, when Vashishta and the royal astrologer looked at it, it was something beyond human contemplation, right? And this is basically the power of the universe that comes together to lend a hand to bring God from the heaven into earth, right? From Vaikuntha to Bhuloka. So Rama was actually born on the month of Chaitra, right? the Paksha or Shukla Paksha. If you look at astrology, there's two, the bright side, Shukla Paksha, or the dark side, Krishna Paksha, right? And the Tithi was Navami, right? You know, Ekadashi, Dwadashi, Tridashi, Trayodashi, Chaturdasi, Panchami, Shashti, you know, Shaptami, Ashtami, Navami, and Dashami, like that, right? Like that, you have all these Tithis. Rama was born on Navami. Navami is the ninth Tithi. Hence, we celebrate Rama Navami, right? Rama was born on the bright side of the Tithi. Anyway, and his nakshatra was Punarvasu nakshatra, and his Rasi was Kataka. Punarvasu nakshatra, Kataka Rasi, or Kataka Laknam, right? Now, according to the Shastras, the Jyotisha Shastras, if you ask these prominent astrologers, right, they will say one who is born with these characteristics, right, month of Chaitra, Shukla Paksha, Navami Tithi, Punarvasu Nakshatra, and Kataka Rashi, this is what they refer to as Panchoche Lokanayakaha. Panchoche Lokanayakaha. That means where these 5 elements are in total alignment, this person has the capacity to rule the universe. Of course, he is in his actual self, Lord Vishnu, the sustainer of the entire universe. Definitely, when he's taking birth, all the universal energies will come and lend themselves in. So he was born at a perfect time where all the 5 things, right? The month, the Masha, the Tithi, the Lagna, the Paksham, and the Nakshatra was in total alignment, right? Total alignment. So he was destined to be the ruler of the universe. Of course, this is the divine plan. So Bharata was born immediately after Rama, right? And his was Pushya Nakshatra, right? Then Lakshmana, and then Sumitra gives birth to Lakshmana and Shatraguna, and they were Ashlesha Nakshatram, right? Or Ayilyam, as it is known, right? So when the 4 of them were born, all the universal planets and the universal energy were in perfect alignment. Of course, like I said earlier, when God is born, God is transcending from heaven to earth. Nothing can stand in the way, and everything facilitates that transition, right? And of course, the will of God is sharper than any sharpest blade, and therefore the 4 princes were born. Rama first, then Bharata, then Lakshmana, then Shatrugna, right? But if you compare it, now this is Treta Yuga, right? Rama's time. If you compare it to the next avatar, which is Krishna avatar, Dwapara Yuga, Krishna was born in total darkness. Complete opposite. Ashtami, right? He was born in prison. And he had to cross the ocean, and you know all the trials and tribulations. I covered this when I did Bhagavad Gita with you. So that was a complete opposite to Rama, right? That's why we celebrate Krishna Janmashtami, Ashtami, right? Krishna Janmashtami, Rama Navami. So because Krishna was being born with all his powers, therefore, the planets, everything else was as ordinary as they could be, because of course Krishna was being born with his powers and he would be able to manage it without any doubt. But Rama was given all this additional help to facilitate his birth, only up until the facilitation of his birth, right? All the universal energies came together. Once he was born, that's it. His life as a normal human person started. Therefore, he didn't need anything. Krishna didn't need anything, but Rama needed that help in order to make sure that his birth was taking place at the right time, because obviously there is a sankalpa to be achieved. Okay. Now, of course, when the babies are born, this is, we are talking in Dasharatha's kingdom, the kingdom of Ayodhya, right? Anyway, it was time to name the babies. And who is always entrusted with the task of naming the baby? It was the Kulaguru, who was Vashishta Maharishi, right? So Vashishta was called, of course, he was all there throughout the Ashwamedha Yajna, the Putrakameshti Yajna, and, you know, looking over the birth and so on and so forth. So he was given the task of naming the babies, right? Of course, now, you see, these Maharishis, right? They have something called Jnana Drishti. Jnana Drishti means just by looking, they can see a picture of what was, what is, and what will be. Right? That is called Jnana Drishti. And you transcend beyond the normal parameters of conscience or consciousness. You can see these things, right? Anyway. And Swami's often displayed that as well, right? Sometimes he'll look at you and he said, what is happening to this? And you think you've not told anybody about it. And Here he is telling the Jnana Drishti. Anyway, so Vashishta knew who these four princes are by divine, but he also knows what his injunctions are. He cannot say this to anybody. Only he, because of his Jnana Drishti. And in the end, it is he who actually comes and tells Rama, your time to go now. Right? Anyway, so Vashishta knew who Rama was, who Bharata was, who Lakshmana was, who Shatrughna was. He knew also what is going to happen, right? He also knew that at a time, the great Maharishi Vishwamitra, Brahmarishi will come, and of course he will take Rama and Lakshmana away. He also knew, he could see the whole thing, right? All like flashing across his. So he knew all about that. So they called him to name the babies. So Dasharatha said, Mahaguru, come, name the babies. So he names each one of them. Now, you pay attention here how this great Rishi, Vashishta, actually refers to the babies and calls them by their name, right? First, he picks up Rama and he says, this is Maryada Purushottama. He is Dharma Purusha. Nothing that he will ever do in his entire life will be unrighteous, right? Just like Yudhishthira in Mahābhārata, right? This is the point I'm making. Just like Yudhishthira in Mahābhārata was known as Dharma Raja, here, one yuga before that, in Treta Yuga, Vashishta is carrying Rama and he's closed his eyes and he's saying, this is Maryada Purushottama, this is Dharma Purusha, this baby is called Rama. And I explained to you the meaning of Rama, right? Right? It has all the three murtis, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara, all three in that. So he was called, I give you Rama. And then he picks up Bharata. Again, he closes his eyes and he says, this baby is going to be named Bharata. And then he says, Bharata Rajya Bharanaha. Bharata Rajya Bharanaha, he says. That means one who has the capacity to rule Bharat. Bharat, of course, if you know, is another reference to India. Now, my question is, Vashishta picks the baby and he says, Bharata Rajya Bharanaha. This baby is going to be called Bharata, born to rule Bharat, one who has the capacity to rule Bharat. Question is, did he rule Bharat? Did he rule India? No, he had the power to rule it. He had the authority to rule it, but he never ruled it. He chose not to rule it. He went to, this I'll talk next week when I'm doing Ayodhya Kanda, right? So he went and brought Rama sandals and he puts the sandals in the throne and he doesn't even step into Ayodhya. He stays outside, right, on an adjacent town called Nandigramaha. And from there he was ruling as, an overseer, the keeper of the royal throne for his brother. This is why the worship of sandals is also part of the sampradaya in the Hindu dharma, right? This is why we worship the feet, we wash the feet, we do something called paduka puja, right? And even when the acharyas do abhishekam in the temples and all of that, they don't start from the top, they always start from the feet, right? And this is one of the characteristics of Pushya Nakshatra, right? They get Father Namaskars. Anyway, even in, I think I've read somewhere in medical science, right? Doctors will agree with me. They say when you bathe, you don't straight away pour water on your head, right? You start with your feet and then you slowly work your way up because, it has the capacity or the potential to cause strokes or heart attacks. So they ask you to wet your feet and then slowly go way up, right? Again, when you step into extremely cold water or on the other side, it can affect your health in different ways. So Paduka pujas are done like that. Worship of the feet completely represents the worship of the entire being, right? That is why we have Swami's Padukas, which we worship. Worship of the Padukas is far more supreme than worship of the entire person who's present before you, right? So Bharata was called Bharata because of Bharadaratya Bharanaha, right? That means one who has a capacity to rule Bharat. Then comes Lakshmana, the third baby born. Right, so he carries Lakshmana, he closes his eyes. Lakshmana, Lakshmi Sampannaha, he says. Lakshmana, Lakshmi Sampannaha. That means one who is born to serve Lakshmi. Now here, I must stop and tell you, who is Lakshmana actually? In real life is Adishesha, right? Mahavishnu rests on him. And of course, Mahalakshmi is serving the feet of Lord Vishnu, and therefore he is also serving Mahalakshmi. Right? So Lakshmana, Lakshmi Sampannaha, that means one who is born to serve Lakshmi. Of course, in serving Lakshmi, anybody who serves Lakshmi has a direct route to Mahavishnu. Because of course, if you look at Vishnu and if you look at his symbolism, right, he has Sri Devi and Bhudevi, both Lakshmis in his heart. So by serving Lakshmi, you get to go to Vishnu's heart straight away, right? So that is why even, when you go to the Kanda, right, in the forest, when Sita wanted that golden deer, it was Rama who went to look for it, and Rama instructed Lakshmana to remain there and look after Sita. So you can see how the naming ceremony is so apt and accurate. So Vashishta carries Lakshmana and says, Lakshmana, Lakshmi Sampannaha, one who is born to serve Lakshmi. So he's Lakshmana, right? And of course, he says, Ashlesha Nakshatra Lakshmana. Then, of course, the final is Shatraguna. He carries Shatraguna and he says, Shatruna itihi Shatraguna, one who has the power to kill all his Shatrus or enemies. Shatru means enemy, right? So Shatruna itihi Shatraguna. So he carries Shatraguna. Now, if you look at Ramayana, you've heard the story, right? Shatraguna never really fought in any of the wars, never really went to war, right? He was more of an official of the kingdom, right? He never really defeated anybody, right? The ones who actually fought was Rama, Lakshman, and of course Hanuman was there. Right? So he never. So why did Vashishta call him Shatruna itihi Shatraguna, one who has the capacity to kill Shatrus or enemies? So we know from the story, he never really defeated anybody, right? So who's the Shatrus that he's talking about? Now, this is where the transformation is coming. The learning from just Shatraguna's name is Shatru means enemy, right? So who are your enemies? So who are your enemies? Your enemies are not outside of you. Your enemies are within you. Your enemies are actually inside of you. If you can find them and kill them, then you're not going to have problems outside. But because that's a difficult thing, right? Because all problems come from within, from your thoughts. Thoughts become, words. Words becomes actions. So, first thing it starts is the thoughts. Because the thoughts always dictating you, isn't it? Go here, do this, say this, don't do this, don't do that, don't say this. Now, there you go. Lie, don't lie. Go, don't go. These are Shatrus. So we have to look at the Shatrus and we have to be Shatraguna in terms of being able, of course, you can only kill the Shatrus within you, in your mind, by ensuring that your intellect is in place. And you can only ensure your intellect is in place by making sure that you have the capacity to attract the right wisdom. Because when wisdom speaks, intellect should listen. When wisdom speaks, intellect should listen. Because then intellect has the capacity to dictate to the mind what it should do, right? This is something you see on the shape of Lord Nataraja or Shiva, the dancing form, And I've again made mention of this in many of my talks, right? He dances on a little baby. And some of my, university professors, these are, people who are at the height of their profession. I'm talking about astrophysics. I'm talking about, universal science and things like that, right? They ask me, why is it that this Lord Shiva, this particular form, he is dancing on a little baby? We find that, rather peculiar. And I said, well, to you, it may be a little baby, but to me, it's a demon called Apasmara Purusha, right? And this demon is the representative of all the 8 doshas in your life, right? And they know what is dosha and all, because they always talk to me, right? So the Ashta doshas is Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Mamada, Matsarya, Ahankara. 8 Ashtadoshas. So by Shiva dancing on this, he is saying, I have mastered these doshas and they will not affect me anymore. Likewise, when you see me in this form, dancing the dance of victory, trampling over this demon called Apasmara Purusha, you should do the same thing. Your aim in life is to conquer all these doshas. Then you are entitled to dance the dance of victory, right? So, one of it is ego, ahamkara, right? Only when ego goes, he comes. Ego doesn't go, he doesn't come. Simple as that, right? For God to come, ego must go. Ego goes, God comes. Okay? Simple as that. It's a simple formula that, we should inculcate or imbibe in our lives, right? And that's why Krishna said, don't worry, if there is adharma, I will incarnate. Sambhavami yuge yuge, right? So at this point, I think I should remind you who the main players were, right, from last week, because you may have forgotten, right, or you may not remember exactly. So, of course, Vishnu is going to come as Rama. Lakshmi is going to come as Sita. Adishesha is, of course, Lakshmana. Changa and Chakra are Bharata and Shatraguna. Lord Indra becomes Vali. Remember this. Huh? Surya becomes Sugriva. Vishwakarma becomes Nala, celestial architect, Vishwakarma. Agni, Deva becomes Nila. Brahma becomes Jambavan. And Shiva becomes Hanuman. So the entire force is fantastically getting prepared to come and do this. You know why? Because Brahma gave Ravana that boon that he cannot be destroyed by any gods, demigods, semi-gods, Rakshasas, Asuras, Gandharvas, Yakshas, all of these. The only two categories he left out was Naraha and Vanaraha. Naraha is man, Vanara is monkey. You think, what can these two do to me if I am all powerful? If the gods themselves cannot defeat me, surely. So with that arrogance, ego, he says, nah, man and monkeys, I am not going to include them, right? That's why Rama had to be born as a normal man. No power, nothing. And of course, whose help did he procure to cross the river and to fight the war? Vanara, monkeys. Okay, so there we go. Right. So the naming ceremony is now over. This is when the actual Bala Kandam starts. Bala is, of course, youth. Kandam is the chapter. So the chapter of youth, the book of youth starts during Rama's childhood. What he did when he was a child, how he grew up. Rama had, Kausalya was his birth mother, but Rama had three mothers. They loved him to bits, and he treated all of them with equal love and equal accessibility and equal, he was not different to any one of them. Exactly how he is to Kausalya, he is to Sumitra, he is to Kaikeyi. And all three mothers also say, they don't think, you are Kausalya's son, or you are Sumitra's son, or you are Bharata, you are Kaikeyi's son. Every one of them treated every one of the princes equally. No difference at all. That is why Rama always says, Janani Janma Bhumischa Swarghadapi Gariyasihi. That means Rama is saying, to me, my mother and my motherland are even more dear to me than Swarga. Janani Janma Bhumischa Swarghadapi Gariyasi. Fantastic. He treated all the mothers the same. The mothers also treated the same. And Rama is again another example of Matrudevo Baba. Anything, he always goes and gets his mother's blessing first. First, God is your mother, right? Even Adi Shankara, right? In Viveka Chudamani, he says, Nasti Ganga Samathitham, Nasti Matru Samo Guru, Nasti Brahman Samo Devaha. Nasti Ganga Samatirtham, he says, there is no purer water or river than the Ganga. Nasti Matru Samo Guru, there is no greater Guru than that who is your mother. Nasti Brahman Samo Devaha, there is no greater divinity than the Supreme Brahman. And of course, mother is at the first, right? So Rama, again, you can see how the Maryada Purushottama, the Dharma Purusha, is behaving even in his childhood. Everybody he treated fairly, with love and with, open arms. Even I told you this story when I was talking to you about Bhagavad Gita, right? When I was doing the Gita satsang. I said to you once, Krishna asked Arjuna in the court, if I am here and Dronacharya, your Kulaguru, is here, right? Bhishmacharya, Pitamaha, is here. And of course, you have Kunti Devi is also here. Who will you prostrate to first? And Arjuna said, of course, you, Bhagavan. You are Krishna. Krishna says, no, if you prostrate to me, I will leave first. And he says, okay, I have to proceed to my guru first. He said, no, your first guru is your mother. Matrudevo Baba. Even Krishna said this to Arjuna. Where you do not respect that injunction, that is a divine injunction, right? If you don't respect that, then you're not going to get the blessings. If you don't get it from Matru, Pitru, Acharya, and Aditi are not going to give you the same thing, right? So Rama had the complete blessings of his three mothers. And I say three mothers, up to a point when Kaikeyi's mind becomes compromised. It's again coming back to our mind, right? The reality. So he was a perfect person, a perfect child to all the three mothers, perfect child to the father, perfect brother to the brothers, right? Perfect friend to his friends who were growing up with. Of course, as a Yuvaraja, as a crown prince, he was a perfect example to all the people in Ayodhya, and they all loved him because he used to go, apparently, if you read the story of his childhood, it says that when he goes out and he sees people working, he'll go and work with them, right? And Dasharatha allows him because Dasharatha's love for Rama was boundless. Because whatever Rama wants to do, and he knows Rama will not do anything wrong, right? So he allows him. Rama will go and work with the farmers in the farm. He will go and drive the bullock carts. He will pick the hay. He will store the hay. So everybody loved Rama because he just knew how to behave himself in every circumstance, right? So now he grows, right? And of course, Bala Kanda, the actual, main crux begins. This is brahmacharya. As you know, man's life is divided into 4 stages, right? This is called the chaturashtramas, right? Brahmacharya, grihastha, vanapratishtha, and of course, sannyasa. And if you look at Ramayana, Rama has gone through all these stages, right? So we take these 4 stages and you apply to the Balakandam, brahmacharyam is Balakandam, right? Up to the point he goes to Mithila, he sees, he participates in the Swayamvara, and then he marries Sita, and then he comes back to Ayodhya. That is his part as the Grihastha, Ayodhya Kandam. Up to the point he goes to Aranya Kandam as well. They are together, right? Then, of course, when his wife is taken away by Ravana, he becomes a Vanapratishtha, that part where he's lonely, he's destitute, and he's completely as a result of attachment. And I spoke to you this at great length when I did Bhajagovindam, right? Now, finally, she comes back, he goes, the war happens, he brings her back. But because of certain, what we call karmic injunctions or vidhi or fate, they can't go live together. And of course, she has to go away. And again, when I'm doing these kandas, I will explain, but I'm just talking to you in the context of the 4 ashramas. Of course, when Sita leaves and goes to, Gautama Rishi, she stays with him, right? And there she gives birth and all of that, right? Anyway, Rama's living the life of a sannyasi. They never get back together, right? And of course, at a later stage when, Lava and Kusha, Rama's sons are joined with him, that's the day Sita goes back to Bhumi Devi, right? That comes in Uttarakandam, and I'll definitely talk about this when I go to that stage. It's the last book, Uttarakandam, the book of finality or the book of completeness, the book of answers. She goes back to Mother Earth, Bhumi Devi. That is why she's called Janaki. Janaki means one who is born of earth, right? And so, the 4 stages are aptly described by Adi Shankara in Bhajagovindam. Balastavat Krida Saktaha, Tarunastavat Taruni Saktaha, Vriddhastavat Chinta Saktaha, Parame Brahmane Kopina Saktaha. When you're a child, you're attached to, play, things of play. Then when you are an adult, adolescent, young person, you are attracted to the opposite sex. Vriddhastavat Chinta Saktaha. And then in the later part of your life, you're only attached to your thoughts, which are mostly worries. And finally, Parame Brahmane Kopina Saktaha, he says. In the end, nobody is attached to that one Para Brahman, right? Young, you're attached to play. You're growing up, you're attached to the opposite sex. Further growing up, after Grihastha, Vanapratishtha, you're attached to your thoughts. What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my car? What's going to happen to my house? What is going? All those thoughts you're attached to. Finally, he says, Parame Brahmane Kopina Saktaha. No attachment to that one Parabrahman God at the end of the day. So Rama was Dasharatha's apple of the eye, right? He was Dasharatha's everything. Again, attachment here. Dasharatha's attachment to Rama and Rama's attachment to his family, his brothers, and then later his wife and all of that. After Rama's 12th birthday, right, it was declared that he was going to be the next king and he's going to be the Yuvaraja, crown prince. Yuvaraja means crown prince. So as they were talking about how to celebrate his birthday and all, came along Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra, as you know, is a great rishi. He was a king. Just like Janaka, King Janaka, Sita's father, Vishwamitra was also a king turned rishi, and then he evolved from one state of a junior rishi to the final state of the greatest state of rishihood, which is Brahma Rishi, right? Now he came, and of course, when rishis of his stature come, they have a powerful way of demanding something very nicely. They have a powerful way of demanding something, but very nicely, which cannot be refused by anybody because they have that stature, they have that command, they have that persona. That the moment you see, you are, what can I do for this rishi? That kind of thing. So Vishwamitra says, "Oh, great Dasharatha, I have come here seeking your help. Will you grant whatever I have asked for?" And Vashishta says Vashishta is also there in the court. So it's a common thing that the Kulaguru is also seated in the crown court by the crown, right? So Vashishta says, "Maharishi Vishwamitra, everybody knows who you are. And if you've come here, you must come." Remember, Vashishta already knows what is going to happen, right? But that is the beauty, you see, when they know something is going to happen, yet they don't talk to anybody about it. Just apply that to our daily life. The moment we know something, straight away, it leaks to every possible corner. Everybody knows about it, right? This is, again, another thing, a lesson for us to learn. Some things are only meant for our knowledge to keep, or for the information is only for us. Right? Because you are perhaps in a privileged situation, you have that information, you have to keep it, because that is the dharma of you getting that information in the first place. So Vishwamitra asks him, "Dasharatha, will you grant whatever I ask for?" Dasharatha says, "Of course, you are a great Maharishi. What is it that I cannot give you, O great Rishi? Ask." And of course, that's all Vishwamitra needed to hear. He says, "I want Rama to come to me because I have a lot of disturbances when I am performing my yajnas. All the asuras and rakshasas are getting in the way. I need your son, Rama, to ward off these evil spirits and rakshasas." You see, Vishwamitra already knew who Rama was and what his purpose of coming down to earth was. So now he has come into the whole play. Now he's seeing Dasharatha and he's asking, "Give me Rama." Dasharatha says, "But Rishi, he's only 12. How can I send him with you? I will send my entire battalion of army. You can take whatever you want from the kingdom and go." Vishwamitra said, "Did you hear me? I want Rama. And you gave me your word. And your word is your honor. And you're bound by that honor. You have to send Rama with me. You said, ask and I will give. Now I'm asking for Rama. Why are you hesitating?" And Vashishta goes to Dasharatha and says, "Don't worry, Vishwamitra is a great guru. He is not an ordinary rishi. There is a reason why he is asking for Rama, and it is in Rama's good. It is to be Rama's advantage if he goes with Vishwamitra and becomes his pupil. And of course, you've given your word, you have to keep your word." So with a lot of hesitation, right, Vishwamitra finally got his wish, and Dasharatha with a lot of hesitation, let Rama go. Of course, Rama, first thing when Dasharatha told him, "You have to go with this rishi, Vishwamitra Rishi." Rama doesn't know who he is, but Vishwamitra knows who Rama is. Rama said, "Okay, father, I take leave." He took Dasharatha's pada namaskaram, he took Vashishta's pada namaskaram, and then as he's going, he says, "Let me say bye to my mothers." So he goes to Kausalya, he says bye. Of course, once the king has decided, nobody can say no. So with a heavy heart, she let him go. Then he went to Sumitra, and Lakshmana was there. He says bye to Sumitra, and Lakshmana was saying, "What? Where are you going? What's happening?" And then Rama explains to him, and Lakshmana says, "No, I'm going to come with you." Rama says, "No, you have to stay here and look after mother." Then he goes to Kaikeyi and gets her blessing. Now he has to go. And, Vishwamitra says, Lakshmana, you want to come, right? You come as well. So Rama was, Rama was, completely powerless to say no to him. He says, okay, Lakshmana, come. So Rama and Lakshmana, of course, Vishwamitra already knew who they were, right? So he calls Lakshmana, he calls Rama, and then of course they leave Ayodhya, right? Vishwamitra came for one thing, he got that one thing and he left straight away. Now, if you apply this practice into our lives, how many times have we wasted time? Even when we want to go and do something, we've done it, but still we don't leave. We hang around, we linger around, we waste so much of time, right? Focus on the act. Once you finish, continue to the next. This is what the rishis are teaching us. So Vishwamitra left with Rama and Lakshmana, and then he took a boat and they crossed the Sarayu Nadi, the river Sarayu. And then they reached the forest or Aranya. Forest, in Sanskrit, it's called Aranya. Hence, we have the Aranya Kanda, which is the stages of Rama, Sita, Lakshmana's life in the forest. And then, of course, Vishwamitra goes to his ashrama and he starts his yajna. He says, Rama, you take the north and the east. Lakshmana, you take the south and the west. Look at this, all four, so that I am not disturbed. Once I go into the yajna, I will not finish until the Purnahuti is offered. And, don't disturb me. So Rama was on guard, Lakshmana was on guard. In the middle, Vishwamitra was busy with his yajnas. Suddenly, out of the blues comes this demon or Rakshasa, Asura called Tataka Rakshasaha, right? Tataka. Rama automatically takes his bows, arrow, shoots and kills this demon. Of course, Vishwamitra is still continuing his. Now, all this time he couldn't, because, when the Rakshasas, Asuras come, Vishwamitra had to fight them. So he couldn't stop. And each time he had to start, stop. So that's why he said, okay, I'm going to go and get the two best people to be my security, Rama and Lakshmana. Right? So he went, he brought them, and he completed. He completed one yajna, and then after 2 days started another. Like this, he was going on. And when he finished in the series of yajna, the last one, he called Rama and Lakshmana, and he said, I'm very happy with your service. I am going to teach you 2 mantras which will allow you to live in any condition whatsoever in this life. Right? It's called Bala mantra and Atibala mantra. Right? That means in whatever situation you're thrown in life, if you recite this mantra, Bala mantra or Atibala mantra, you will be fine. Right? So he taught them that. Of course, he knows who Rama is, who Lakshmana is, right? But they don't know. So you must always be conscious of this thought, right? Because most of the people who talk to me, they talk to me in the knowledge that Rama is God. I say, yeah, you know now, having read it, that Rama is the 7th avatar of Vishnu. But did Rama know that? No. So how can we attach something that Rama was completely unaware of to him and expect him to behave in that way? No. So Vishwamitra said, don't worry, as long as you are here serving me, I will take you as my shishya and I will equip you with all the astras. Astras are what we call weapons, right? Today we have something called the nuclear weapon, the biological weapon. In those days, it was called the astras. And of course, the most powerful astra, I mentioned this when I did Bhagavad Gita with you, is the Brahmastra. So they went to another ashram after that. It's called the Siddha Ashrama. And he said, I have to do a six-day yajna here as well. So he started, first day went fine. Second day went fine. Third day, when he was doing, Rama and Lakshmana, of course, were waiting there, Fine. Fourth day, fine. On the 6th day, 2 demons came. Maricha and Subahu, right? Maricha and Subahu. Now, this is Maricha, right? Not Marichi. Marichi comes later. So Rama used the Manava Astra to kill Maricha, and he used the Agni Astra to kill Subahu. He kills them both, right? Because he's been taught and given the power, just like Arjuna was trained. Rama was a fantastic archer, right? He killed. So the yajna, Vishwamitra completes the yajna, and they move on with their journey, right? So Rama's birth was to ensure that dharma is done throughout, right? So he, even in his childhood, his dharma was to protect these rishis from, disturbance from the evil forces of the asuras or the rakshasas. And of course, they reached the next stage. He is going to see Vishwamitra is taking them from one stage to another, and at that particular place, he has to perform yajnas for 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, or whatever it may be. and Rama and Lakshmana. You see, that is to facilitate the destruction of the asuras. He doesn't just tell them, go to this place, kill that asura, go to this place, kill that asura, go to this place, kill that asura. No, he goes to a particular place, and to facilitate the advent of the asuras, he does a yajna, a homa, and whilst he's doing it, those evil forces come and disturb, right? So the next ashrama, remember, I went to his first, then the Siddha ashrama. Now the third ashrama that they have arrived is called Gautama ashrama. Gautama ashrama, you must, you may have read. Gautama is a famous rishi as well, right? And of course, he had a beautiful wife called Ahalya. Ahalya, right? And of course, because of some, something that's not totally her fault, right? Gautama Rishi said, because of this desire of yours, again, it boils down to desire, right? So I don't want to go into the background of Indra coming and wanting, Gautama Rishi's wife, Ahalya, and she looked at him and said, wow, what a handsome man. That's all she thought. But the fact that she was married and she thought someone else was handsome was enough. She was cursed to become a stone. Because Gautama Rishi said, you are full of vanity, right? Because you think you are beautiful, you look at other men and you see beauty in them when you are already married. So he says, you will become a stone, a small stone, and this curse, this sharp, sharp will remain with you until a pure man, a pure human being, a dharma purusha, a maryada purushottama comes and his feet touches this stone. I mean, what is the likelihood of that happening? Right? So it's like a lifetime curse for Ahalya, right? Then, of course, once he throws the water from his kamandalu, she becomes a small stone and remains there. Now, what happens then? And of course, Vishwamitra reaches Gautama ashram. Behind him, Rama and Lakshmana. So Rama first, Lakshmana behind him, right? So three of them are walking in that way. Now, unknowingly to Rama, at one point, his feet kicked a little stone or a little rock. And suddenly this little rock became Ahalya. And she was restored to her former glory. That's why you sing this bhajan, or one of these bhajans. Ahalyo dvaraka Rama, Sharpa vimochana Rama. This Shiriri Purisha Rama, Satya Sai Shri Karandama. That's the bhajan. I was thinking of the title. Dasharatha Nandana Rama, Daya Sagara Rama. Son of Dasharatha, who is a compassion, ocean of compassion, Daya Sagara. Right? Raghukula Tilaka, one who is shining as the next in line. Anyway, so Ahalya was restored. And of course, the gift that they were giving back to Gautama Rishi was Ahalya. What a fantastic thing, right? Anyway, so he's called Sharpa Vimochana Rama, Papa Vimochana Rama. And I told you earlier, right? Sri Rama Rama Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tattulyam Rama Nama Varanane. The mention of the word Rama once is equivalent to the power of having mentioned it Sahasrara, 1,000 times. So the name is so powerful. Hence, you have a lot of people, both in the South India and North India, who write, Rama Nama. That's why that's the practice. Why they write Sri Rama Jayam or, Rama Jayam or Sri Rama Jayam or Jai Jai Ram or Jai Sri Ram, they write. So every time they write, you're empowering yourself. We think it is in vain. What is the point of writing this 1,000 times, 100 times, or 108 times, right? But Ahalya was released from the curse simply because Rama's feet touched her. So if Rama's feet can have so much of power, Rama's name, you think about it, right? She was only waiting to see him because it was destined that she meets him. And then, of course, just like Krishna says, Moksha Shyami, she gets moksha after that. Then, of course, that job is done now for Gautama ashrama. Remember, all these ashramas, something is happening, right? So it is something that was needed to be done at that right time by Rama. And of course, the guide is all the gurus. What happened in Ayodhya? Vashishta was there to guide him. After taking him out of Ayodhya, Vishwamitra is there to guide him. right? During the war, I'll talk to you about Agastya Muni, right? Agastya Muni is, when I'm doing Yuddha Kandam, I will tell you that he is the one who went to Rama. Rama was thinking, I am no match for Ravana. I'm no match. How am I going to do this? Finish. I'm doomed. I cannot save my wife. What kind of a man am I? Blah, 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 blah. He was just thinking. And Agastya goes to him and gives him a mantra. Says, say this. Surya. And this is called Aditya Hridayam. And I'll talk to you about it when I do Yuddha Kanda. Right? So, Vishwamitra said, okay, boys, our job is done here. Let's head towards Mithila. Now, Mithila is where Janaka has his kingdom, right? Mithila Nagar. Right? And Janaka, of course, has got Sita. So Vishwamitra already knows the next stage is he's going to take the boys there, right? So he says, okay, let's walk in that direction, and soon we will reach Mithila. Of course, Vashishta also knows what is going to happen, and he's just waiting, right, for things to happen. So when they reached Mithila, what was happening was Janaka was having a Swayamvara. You know, Swayamvara means it is like a procedure or like an event where, you know, the prize is the girl, i.e. Janaka's daughter Sita was the prize, and all the kings or whoever is coming to participate in the contest will have to show that they are fit to obtain Sita as a result of their, you know, their courage, their warriorship, in all of that. Swayamvara. Same thing, remember, in Mahābhārata, right? When Arjuna went, of course, he couldn't go as Arjuna because they were in hiding. So he went as a normal, you know, Kshatriya who's like a rishi. He went. And of course, he won Draupadi in the Swayamvara. Same thing. That's also when he became, you know, head to head with Karna, right? And there was a lots of problems. That's when Karna got introduced to Duryodhana, and they became best of friends, blah, blah, blah. But even coming back to Janaka, King Janaka in Mithila. So he's having the Swayamvara, and there were all the, you know, all the suitors who had come to participate in there, all were waiting. And then, of course, these modern days, we don't do Swayamvaras anymore. We have, what do we have? We have Shadi.com, right? Shadi.com is enough. That is the new Swayamvara of these times. In those days, it was different. You had to prove that you were man enough to get someone's daughter. And of course, the contest was to lift what we call the Shiva Danush. Danush called Pinaka or Pinakine, which, you know, as a young girl, Sita was playing with it. So she could lift it, right? But no one else could lift it. No one else in the kingdom could lift that except Sita. So Janaka, during the Swayamvara, very cleverly said, anyone who can lift the Shiva Danush. Shiva Danush means the bow that belongs to Lord Shiva, right? The bow has a name. Just like, you know, Arjuna's one had a name, right? Gandiva. This also had a name. It's called Pinaka. Now, of course, if you know the Sri Rudram, you know Sri Rudram, in the Namakam, the word Pinaka or Pinakine comes 3 times. If you look at all the first Anuvaka, third, second, third, fourth, like that, until the 11th Anuvaka, this word Pinaka or Pinakine comes 3 times. So it is the bow of Lord Shiva. Very powerful bow. And as I said, Sita, during, you know, when she was young, she was playing with it. And she, you know, she lifted it and played. So many people came. So all the kings, the crown princes, the Yuvarajas, the Yakshas, the Gandharvas, everybody had come and they were all trying. And Vishwamitra was offered a seat because he had 2 boys with him. Nobody knew who they were, right? Janaka didn't know. None of them knew. But they knew Vishwamitra is a great rishi. So they thought it's one of his, you know, students or whatever. So they offered him a seat. Rama was standing on one side. Lakshmana was standing on one side. Look at this. This is a humility, right? When the guru is sitting down, the students never sit, right? Of course, with Swami is a bit different, right? Swami makes sure that everybody is seated. He is standing, he is walking around. Also, of course, in the rooms, he sits and he asks everybody to sit. But if you look at the Sampradaya, the practice is when the guru is there, nobody sits unless the guru tells you to do it. Of course, Rama is watching what is happening. Why did the Guruji bring us here? You know, we want to know what's happening. So he looked at he looked at Lakshmana. Lakshmana looked at him and they were just thinking, okay, maybe, you know, there's a reason why he's brought us here. And then after everybody had gone, you know, Janaka says, is there anybody else who wants to try? It looks like nobody can do it. And then Rama, of course, is just standing there. He does not know what he's meant to do. So he's just standing there, of course, in the absence of any instruction from Vishwamitra. And then Vishwamitra looks at Rama. He says, Rama, go and string that bow. So Rama was, Guruji, what do you want me to? He said, go and string that bow. I said, string that bow, right? You understand what it means? Okay, fine. Because all the people there who tried, they couldn't even lift it. But Vishwamitra is telling Rama, pick up the bow and string it. That means, you got to take the string from one end, bend it so as to tie the other end, and that you've strung. Only when you've strung, you can use the bow, right? Now, lifting itself was a huge problem, right? So Rama went, took Pada Namaskar from Vishwamitra. So the lesson here is, even though we are told sometimes by our parents, by our uncles, by the elders, go and do this, it is always advisable to get their Purna blessings by touching their feet. When you touch their feet, your humility is empowered so much that you become powerful, right? 100%. So, of course, he was successful. Rama took the bow. Not only he took the bow, he held it at the top, he bent it, he took the string and he strung the bow, and he was holding it in one hand. Oh my God, Janaka was saying, wow, such a powerful, who is this person? Who is this person? Then he calls him, Janaka calls him and says, right. He gives a garland to Rama and he says, right, you marry my daughter now. And then Vishwamitra gets up. Of course, Rama doesn't do anything, right? Rama is looking to Vishwamitra. And Vishwamitra is saying, wait. He goes, he gets up and he tells Janaka, do you know who is this? He is Rama, the prince, the crown prince of Ayodhya. He is the son, the eldest son of Dasharatha. And you just give him a mala and ask him to put on your daughter's neck? No, it's not going to happen that way. We have to invite Dasharatha and his wives, and Dasharatha has 2 other sons. So only when they all come will this marriage take place. Now, Vishwamitra knows Janaka, King Janaka, has 2 daughters, Sita and Urmila. Then he tells Rama, when he marries Sita, his brother Lakshmana will marry Urmila. Are you agreeable? Janaka said, wow, it's like buy one, get one free. So Janaka was very happy. He says, okay, definitely, you are Vishwamitra, you're Maharishi, right? So please, yes, I'm very happy with this. But then, after a day or 2, Dasharatha and his entourage arrive. Bharata and Shatrugna are there now. But Janaka only had 2 daughters, Sita and Urmila. Rama to Sita, Lakshmana to Urmila. Now, Vishwamitra knew that Janaka had a brother in a nearby kingdom called Kushatvaja, right? And he had 2 daughters called Mandavi and Shrutakriti. Right? So he says, look, these are also Dasharatha's son, Rama's brothers, right? Bharata and Shatrugna. So Bharata will get married to your brother's daughter, Mandavi, and Shatrugna will get married to Shrutakriti. So invite your brother to come with his 2 daughters. Of course, Janaka was overjoyed, right? And of course, Dasharatha also agreed because Vishwamitra and Vashishta also said, look, this is destined to happen. So all 4 marriages took place at the same time. That's why, and it fell on a day called Uttra Phalguni Nakshatra. And that's why Rama Kalyanam or Lakshmi Kalyanam or Sita Kalyanam is celebrated very widely, especially in the Brahmin culture. If you see, they will have a particular event in the marriage that is when they sing Sita Kalyanam Vaibhogame Rama. Until today, it is celebrated as because of the Uttra Phalguni Nakshatra, right? It is the most auspicious to get married. Anyway, so I want to mention one thing here, right? When they were born, all 4 were born together. Rama, Bharata, Lakshmana, Shatrugna. When they got married, they all got married together. Rama to Sita, Lakshmana to Urmila, Bharata to Mandavi, and Shatrugna to Shrutakriti. And when they leave the earth to go back to their original, they left together as well. The only exception is Sita. Sita has a different role to play, and she came for a particular purpose, and then she left at a particular time she's supposed to leave. Because when these four guys were ending their lives, walking into the river to merge and become who they really are, Sita was there to receive them. Oh, Mahalakshmi was there to receive Vishnu, Adishesha, Shanga, and Chakra. Right now, so all the four of them get married on the same day. Huge celebrations, very, 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 very happy. Everybody is overjoyed, right? Rama marries Sita, Lakshmana marries Urmila, Bharata marries Mandavi, and of course, Shatrughna marries Shrutarkriti. Very powerful, right? So you have this celebration. Now, after that, they all get ready to leave, going back to Ayodhya, right? So going back to Ayodhya signals the ending of Bala Kanda and the beginning of Ayodhya Kanda. So it's fantastic. So the lesson here is, there are things that we have to do at certain points in our life. And sometimes we just have to leave it to the powers of the divine, the universal energies, to guard us and guide us. And they will send someone, just like, Vashishta was there to receive Rama at his birth. Vishwamitra was there to take him and train him and teach him all of this. And then, of course, when they go to Ayodhya Kanda next week, when I'm talking to you about Ayodhya Kanda, I'll tell you who else they met and how else Rama was empowered. Everything was, giving him little bit, to such a stage where they take away that is one that is most dear to him, and they put him in a desolate, despondent state where he has to fight to uphold dharma. And he fights and wins successfully. Right? Rama, 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 Ram. Rama, 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 Ram. Ramaya, Ramabhadraya, Ramachandraya, Vedase, Raghunathaya, Nathaya, Shitayam, Pataye Namaha. Anyada Sharanam Nasti Tumeva Sharanam Mamaha. Tasmat Karunya Bhavena Raksha Raksha. Sai Ishvara Om Tat Sat. Thank you, Sai Ram. I will see you next week for Ayodhya Kanda. Now, once they are married, they go back to Ayodhya. A new chapter begins.